citizens of Earth, gird your loins and open your minds. You have now willfully submitted to the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy.
Alright, so slightly ignoring the fact that that is the old video not being replaced with the new video because the new video is slightly too big for StreamYard to accept. This is the Party for Prosperity and Supervillainy. Excuse me, Popcorn and Supervillainy, because it is a popcorn episode. Popcorn and Supervillainy! Ah, 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 ah! Greetings and salutations. I am the Mad Hat Cat, and I am just a teensy itty bitty bit hopped on the champagne. The champagne, because Dr. Zodiac and I were reviewing The Fifth Element for the other channel that we're on, Us Three Blokes. Just a teensy itty bitty bit. Anyway, if you are to refer to me in the third person, you may use the pronouns they, them, theirs, themself, perhaps to proclaim the wonders of our most deviant and devious party. But if you're not going to use pronouns, that's also cool, because what are you going to do with them? Let me introduce my supervillainous associate, who is hopefully slightly a bit more sage than me, Dr. Zodiac.
Good afternoon.
Maybe, possibly.
I'm punching here. Well, I'm happily buzzed, slightly food coma.
Just a wee bit?
Just a bit. I ordered sushi and decided to, really work myself over on that. I would like to point out that if you are in the Omaha area, Beertopia sells, sorry, I'm trying to get my directions straight, mead in cans.
I was going to say, is that the strawberry mead that you had
Why, yes.
2 weeks ago?
Yes, it is. And so it's Friday, and, you definitely need to blow off a little steam. It's been an interesting week. So.
It has been an interesting week. Not just for, like, international type of reasons, but also just, like, personal reasons, yeah?
Yes.
I don't know. What would you say has been your interesting aspect of things?
I have discovered that one of my coworkers has decided to move on, and it's going to make for an interesting few months. So we'll see how it goes. You will see a particularly exhausted Dr. Zodiac, who will probably getting more and more villainous as he gets more and more frustrated. The positive side, I am getting toward the absolute tail end of the first draft of the second novel, so that should be coming out. Although, ironically, it is written from the perspective of a hero, so enjoy.
Very good.
Although, I might take that same universe and then write a villain into it. I actually have a villain novel written from a few years ago that I have to sit down and edit for entertainment purposes. So I'll put that one out. And, of course, my stimulus check arrived, and with that in mind, I bought a whole bunch of super villainous gear, a computer chair, a new video editing suite, and a couple of other toys. So things might get even weirder than they already have been. Oh, and by the way, I am Dr. Zodiac, and if you should refer to me in the third person through pronouns, I would like to point out that my preferred ones are he, him, or my lord.
My lord, always a very good choice.
Yeah. That last one definitely said unbent knee, always will get over with me.
Oh, yes. I mean, obviously, like, even if you, kind of slurred the my lord and it became a kind of millard, but if it was on bent knee, readily accepted. Accepted.
Bent knee definitely gives you bonus points in the greater game as far as that's concerned. That's just
well, first I would like to do the semi-traditional, not the reading of the party manifesto, but the semi-traditional greeting of Han Pritchard, most loyal and wondrous viewer. Thank you for joining us again. Today is going to be goopy, babloofy, and other such nonsense words. Even more so than usual. I know it's a popcorn episode, and that's usually the case, but even more so today. I have a feeling in my guts. But now, in addition to the semi-traditional greeting of the Han Pritcher, Thank you for joining us. Oh, and a Lily too. Yay!
Any day is made
All
better.
my favorite people are coming today. That's fantastic.
Yeah, any day is made better with the appearance of both Han and Lily. So, although
yes, this is a great day.
I've never actually met Han in person, although I am looking forward to going out and destroying a bunch of dim sum at some point in time with Lily. So, hopefully, it worked out.
Dim sum sounds really, really good. And the second that it is semi-feasible to go back to San Francisco, potentially I might drag you along with me because there's a really good dim sum place there. Hopefully, I mean, they're like large enough, I assume, to have withstood the pandemic, but I don't know for certain. We will hope. We will hope, and we will go there for the many carts of delicious, tasty, steamy, tasty things.
Yeah, I might have to rent somebody with a wheelbarrow to just kind of push me back over to the hotel afterward. But
It'll be good. It'll be good. Oh, and then when they bring the dessert tray, like the dinner portion is good enough, but the dessert tray, ooh.
So, let's see where we are at. Hold on, somebody's bombing me in the background. I wish I knew what was going on. Hopefully I have not lost everyone at this point. With any luck. Maybe the silly faces of the camera see who's watching. Cannot hear anyone. Hopefully people can hear me. I might just go off on a strange supervillainous rant about the upcoming madness, but I have just messaged the Mad Hat Cat, and I'm hoping they will reply back to me. Hopefully I've not lost all internet connectivity. We'll see how it goes. It's another exciting day here at the lair. Yes. Excellent. I cannot hear you, so I'm not certain what's going on. Let me see. If I bounce out and bounce back in, let me see if that changes anything. We'll see how it works out. Occasionally, the internet is in and of itself a supervillain. We'll see how it works. Oh, Cat is frozen. All right. So, who is the arch nemesis of the party, by the way? I'm going to have to go with the overall concept of
unfettered capitalism.
Yes, there we are. Excellent. Wonderful. Pleasure to have you back. I'm grateful that I didn't decide to check and see if I was still online by doing something horrifying and disgusting in front of the camera.
Oh no, Han tells me that I'm frozen. I hope I'm not frozen now.
You have returned, and we are grateful.
You never know if America can be made safe someday. I might have to visit Omaha. I await the government of prosperity and supervillainy to take over soon. Cat is frozen. Who's the arch nemesis? Okay, I'm totally caught up on chat. Doctor, are you with us again?
Yes, I am back, and
fantastic. Yes, if we have an arch nemesis, I'm trying to think of what I said, and by trying to think, I mean I'm literally pulling up my YouTube studio so that I can see what I put in the description. Beep 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 beep. Nope. No. No. There we go. The edit. Yes. That's what I want. As I turn my head sideways because for whatever reason my phone is not wanting to do the automatic twist. Dismantling the most heinous parts of capitalism, imperialism, and patriarchy, with occasional breaks for cuddles, cats, and cartoons. New transmissions every Friday, except for last Friday because we were volunteering. Yes. But yes, I think that sums up. And I specifically chose the words the most heinous parts of, because obviously there are parts of, we'll say, each of those things that maybe potentially have some merit. I won't say that they are in totality evil, because I'm very hesitant to say that of just about anything. But yes, our arch nemesis, plural, unfettered capitalism, imperialism, and patriarchy.
Anything that basically decides that anyone who is a sentient being is in some way, shape, or form an object to be profited from, we're pretty much opposed to.
Yeah, I don't much care for that idea. You can be very excited, I think, at the prospect of gaining knowledge, of gaining an ability to help those around you, but the idea of gaining capital, power, influence, whatever you want to call it, it's all relatively the same thing. Gaining that just for the sake of gaining it and hoarding it, it doesn't really do you so much good, and it doesn't do anybody else so much good. So why you do the thing? Why you do the thing, and you make on me crazy.
There's an element of sitting around and deciding, you know what I need to do? I need to turn life in and of itself into a numbers game where if I have more than you do, I win. And I'm like, I don't know. It seems like kind of a hollow life to me, but, you know.
Math can be fun. At that point, I think the math becomes less fun.
Yeah.
Less fun. I'm going to be going back and forth here and putting my fingers all over the screen because my computer is, well, rather my laptop, my computer is just over there being slightly unused until my subscription to Power Director expires, and then I will either purchase DaVinci Resolve or Filmora for the video editings. So I won't be editing on my phone anymore. What a concept.
Oh my.
But for the moment, normally I have my laptop up here with my notes, but right now my laptop is downstairs because I'm applying for a thing, and it's there for me to gather all my application materials. So switching back to my Google Doc, the reading of the party manifesto. Number 1, whenever possible. Keyword, whenever possible. Well, keywords, key phrase, whenever possible. Supervillains must treat others with kindness, civility, and respect. One never knows who they might be addressing and what sort of day they have had.
Rule the 2nd. Hate is hate and should be directed toward systems wicked and behaviors most foul, rather than toward individual persons and groups en masse.
Hopefully you actually got the notification to the grease. I guess I could always just send you the link in Facebook Messenger, but you seem to have it. Either that or you've miraculously memorized it, and that's very impressive.
Uh-huh. All right. Hopefully it's still there. Has the cat frozen again? To my eyes, the cat has frozen again, although I am not certain how the rest of the audience is receiving them.
Day of coming in, coming out. Who said that I was freezy freeze? Was it
me? I was saying that. I understand I've gone through this process on numerous occasions.
Oh no. All rise. Are we suddenly at a meeting for the recovering Catholics?
You know, I wouldn't write it off, all things considered.
We were on Rule the 4th, as you would say it, my dear doctor.
So that would be my turn then. Rule the 4th. Your thoughts are your thoughts and can never be taken from you. Your words said aloud and your actions in the world have consequences. Choose your words and actions wisely. Valid point, please keep in mind you are not being censored, we're just calling you on your shit. And it happens to me pretty much weekly.
I love how you said that like it's written in, when I'm like, that is absolutely not what's currently written into the manifesto. Is this a proposed amendment? I noticed that you're frozen now, and I'm frozen. Everybody is freezing today. It may have something to do with, as Han just put it in the comments, a volcano in Iceland is erupting. Is that what is causing all of the sudden freezing? Something joke about ice? land, the land of ice and a volcano, which is very fiery and hot. Dear God, I don't know.
You come from the land of the ice and snow? Oh, wait, different. Yes.
I don't know. I tell you what, I am going to pop back out, and then I'm going to kick you out, but invite you back in.
Okay.
We'll see if hopefully that fixes
Good luck.
the thingamajigger. Cronenberg doesn't agree that your thoughts are your thoughts. Well, what does Cronenberg know other than the nightmares of my deepest, darkest times? All right. Okay. Hopefully, this has fixed the problem. We will see. If it is not fixed the problem, I will go and fetch my laptop. Although we've always started the stream off on my phone. That's how we always do it. Right. Maybe it work. Maybe it do thing. What do you think?
I think it could work. Apparently, according to Han,
You look like you're moving.
Welcome back.
I look like I'm moving.
Yes. We'll see how it goes. We apologize in advance. There might be technical issues throughout this.
My apologies.
We were having issues earlier when we were messing around trying to get the other program started. So we'll see how it goes.
The internet is just being a big old fusspot today. I'm going to go ahead and just blame it on that volcano in Iceland.
Yeah.
Its havoc is spreading all the way here. So thank you, Han, for alerting me to that instance so that I may use it as a thing to which to pass the buck.
Yes.
That was a sentence. I swear to the heavens. I believe we left off on rule number 4, my dear doctor. And in the highlights stream, I swear that I will figure out a way to make this happen.
Okay, so rule the 4th. Your thoughts are your thoughts and can never be taken from you. Your words said aloud and your actions of the world have consequences. Choose your words and actions wisely.
I just took a small moment to eat a little bit of cereal because I am lacking in the food. One moment.
Okay. I think Kat was expecting me to pontificate again, but I did that earlier, so.
You did a very nice read. You did a very nice read, and I appreciate it muchly. All right. You have read the rule the 4th, and so on to rule the 5 instead of rule the 5th. You thought I was going to say rule the 5th, but you'd be wrong. The party will not shun the ignorant, but willful ignorance is a crime of the highest degree, and rehabilitation must either be scheduled or performed on the perpetrator's own time. And what does that mean? That means either you must request of someone who has told you, hey, this is the wrong, or no, that's not quite right, bully for you, you tried. You've either got to go to that person and say, hey, I should like to know more about why I didn't quite get it right. Would you be willing to assist me? And if they say no, you take that no for what it is, and you walk away, and you go to the Google. You go to the Google.
Yes.
Which is, I suppose, what...
I'm not certain, but I believe that Kat has frozen up again. We shall see how this works out.
Nonsense. I'm frozen again?
Yes, but you're back now, so.
Why? Why is this happen? Why does it happen? Please read rule the 6th before I drop out again.
Before it craps out.
Before I drop out like a belabored college student.
Rule the sixth. The party, much like Socrates, knows for certain that they know nothing for certain, and reserves the right to refine and amend its manifesto on an ongoing basis.
Yes. I've been actually thinking about what some amendments might be, or what refinements might happen to some of the base rules. And every time I start to think of some, I usually go back in the other direction of like, I mean, we basically cover it, so there's really no need to go into like scrupulous detail. Hopefully I'm using that word correctly. What we wanted to talk to today, if this flippin' thing is even streaming correctly, and I have titled it correctly, because I had to do it twice, actually. It started as one stream, and then I had to go, no, it's not accepting it because I used sideways carrots, and the YouTubes do not like it when you use sideways carrots in your titles, your descriptions, nothing.
Yeah.
But what I have titled it is, I learned it from watching you, okay? And kind of what our main popcorny, light, fluffy, buttery topic today is going to be the villains that kind of inspired us to devolve or evolve into supervillainy, depending on how you want to look at it.
Now, it might be my bias, but I prefer to view it as an evolution into something a bit better than what I was before. But again, my bias is obvious, and I'm rolling with it.
It's kind of a combination of things. Oh, hey, Justin Norris here. This isn't where I parked my car. I mean, dude, where did you park your car? Because I've looked around and I don't see it. So I don't know. In any case, hey, Justin, good to see you again. This is the absolute goofiest episode for you to drop in on, but I'm happy to have you. How are you doing?
It started silly, and it's only going to get weirder, so enjoy the show.
I want to say that last time I checked in, he was somewhere up in the Northeast, but wherever you are, I hope you're doing as well as you can, and feeling as good as you can. Before we kind of launch into the main topic, I would like to say that kind of a nice thing to start off to. What's something delicious that you have eaten or listened to recently, Doctor? Do you have an answer for such? Otherwise, I have a ready to go thing.
In terms of something delicious I have eaten recently, I literally just ordered sushi from one of my favorite places. Enjoyed that immensely. I am not a big fan of rolls, but I love nigiri, so I ended up getting the tuna and mackerel. It was absolutely wonderful. And in terms of something that I've listened to recently, I took a step backward to introduce a friend of mine to one of my favorite Japanese bands, Dir Grey. And I always figure that, especially for people who are into extreme music, there is a song of theirs called Venushka, where Kyo, their lead singer, goes from the bottom of an 8-octave range to the top of an 8-octave range, often between about 10 seconds worth of work.
That sounds very impressive.
Yeah,
technically speaking.
Yeah, if I've not sent it to you, I will send you the link, because it is a vocal performance that's both kind of like technically amazing and psychologically absolutely unhinged. It's one of the ones that I sit there from time to time and think, God, if I actually had a voice, I would try to do that. But I don't have a voice. I'll let somebody else do it for me.
I feel that way every time I watch the opera sequence in Fifth Element, which is what we just reviewed today over on Us Three Blokes.
Yes.
I have plotted out a number of different variations of a burlesque type number that would feature kind of a transformation between the diva to Lilu, and go from, very, I don't know, what's the adjective I want to throw in here? Heavenly operatic solo into kick-ass fighting sequence, even though unfortunately that kick-ass fighting sequence ends up with Lilu in the ceiling bleeding.
Yeah.
I like to pretend that it ends before that happens. But yeah, no, I feel that way every time I watch that. It's heavenly.
Yes, it's one of the more staggering pieces of both performance and editing I've ever seen in my life. So,
as far as like delicious things I have eaten and or listened to, could they be both? Could they be both? There is a boba place that we like to go to, usually when we get poke. Poke is good, but for whatever reason, yesterday the boba was what was really enticing for me. I order what I always look at the menu before I run inside and then run back outside while I'm waiting for it to be prepared. But I always end up getting the same thing. I don't even know why I bother looking at the menu. I'm like, maybe I want winter melon this time. Maybe I want matcha. Maybe I want something with red bean in it. I don't know. But I almost always end up getting the same thing. It's the cocoa cream wow with milk cap, I think is what the menu item is technically called. And it's like, I guess you could call it like cookies and cream boba with I don't know, it's all very like chocolate, vanilla, creamy, hot on the bottom, cold on the top magicness. And on the very top is a very fluffy kind of almost latte like foamy milk cap that is kind of salty and sweet, that is really, really good. And the two of them together, the hot on the bottom, the cold on the top, and then the salty, creamy, sweet milk cap on the top. Nom, 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 nom. I literally lick the plastic glass clean so that I can rinse it out and chuck it in the recycle bin. But it's really good. I'll bring you one sometime.
Yes, please.
But that is just like a very, I don't know that I'd call it a simple pleasure because it's kind of involved. Boba is very involved, especially if you're using a straw that is too narrow for the boba to get through, like I was last night. And so I kept having to like use my straw to, close the air path on the top of the straw and then lift it up. Eat one boba, get another, roll it around, whip. For the entire thing, because the damn straw was too narrow. I don't like using plastic straws because at least I can, recycle the cap and the cup. So I have very large kind of smoothie straws at home that I like to use, but it was just a little too narrow to accommodate the boba. I mean, no.
Wait,
it's okay. I made it work.
That is the classic villain denial moment. No!
Boba! All right, new nemesis. Forget unfettered capitalism and imperialism and patriarchy. My new nemesis is the boba that are slightly too wide for my straw.
We could, and I'm reasonably certain they'd be okay with this. We could borrow a concept and modify it a little bit from the Church of the Subgenius. They have a thing called a short-duration personal savior. And the short-duration personal savior is the thing that, in that particular moment, is the religious, spiritual thing that happened to you. It could be, the amazing sex you just had. It could be the brick that just missed your head. It could be any of those things. So in this case, I think that we, as the Party of Prosperity and Supervillainy, should have a short-duration personal nemesis, and the boba totally fits into that.
That sounds like a really interesting idea that I would love to explore someday.
We'll have to borrow that and put it to use. The all-time irritating, annoying moments of life where you sit there and go, is it the end of the world? No. But if the world ended right now, I would totally be screaming, no! For a completely unrelated reason.
I know this is like the 12th time this has happened in this particular stream. But does everyone else see the Doctor as frozen again? He's frozen for me.
Hopefully you can still hear me. I am, as far as
No, I can totally still hear you. It's just that you are statuesquely still.
I'm reasonably certain I can never be caught in a cool moment being statuesque. Pretty certain sitting here, you know.
Whilst I wait for you to see if you reanimate again, if not, I will call in the reanimator and we'll see what we can do. I wanted to rummage around in chat because I see a few familiar names. Han, how you can manage to edit anything on the phone is amazing. It's because of the stylus, and I can get in all the nooks and crannies, and also because the OCD, I'm pretty sure. And I can make all those very refined edits. I saw definitely lonospheric perturbations. I don't even know what that means, but I would like to look it up. I'm gonna take a mental snapshot of that. Cat is scarfing candy while in class. It is not candy. It is Reese's Puff cereal. It's both chocolate and peanut butter, and it's delicious. But we're not here to talk about cereal. The evil cat is evil. I wouldn't say evil necessarily. I would say mischievous with a propensity for naughtiness. I feel like that's pretty accurate. I feel
the cat has not seen anything on a shelf that they have not thought, I could knock that off. I'd be good.
I mean, there are no flat surfaces behind me, but if there were, you can bet that I would very slowly be edging it towards the edge. I like to knock things off the shelf. It's fine. And then Justin popped into the chat, and I was like, tuna and mackerel, yes. Dimash Kudai Berrigan can do something like that too. He's amazing. In fact, he can sing the diva dance all by himself. I don't know who that is, but I'll have to look that up. I assume it has something to do with the operatic piece in The Fifth Element. We'll have to look. And then Fabi came in. Hello, Fabi. Nice to see you. I swear we'll get back on track here. Whether or not the Doctor is mobile again, I don't know that we're... Are you mobile to yourself?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I'm mobile to myself. Am I
You're still mobile on
statuesque in you?
No. You're still mobile on my screen at this point.
All right. I guess we're just gonna have to see how it comes out in the final video. We'll figure it out. Maybe with just over the completely static image, I will add like a tiny cartoon face going in the highlights video.
I would actually really look forward to seeing what kind of bizarre cartoon stuff that you actually put me through.
I'm excited for when I will have. I mean, I have the. I guess technically the time now. It's more so the energy that I am looking for. The energy to make the highlights videos for the now. By the way, this is a speaking of traditional things. This is our 8th official episode, 9th week of actually doing this if we include our super secret pilot episode.
Yes.
And I would just like to say, congratulations. Very nice. Very good. Yes. Because we said we were going to do the thing, and 9 weeks later, we are still doing the thing. Actually, technically speaking, it's 10 weeks later. because last week I uploaded our sort of, we'll say our first outreach
Yes.
to the potential minions from the underground resistance.
Yes.
I'll still probably continue to tweak that a little bit. I'm super mad that that video that I uploaded last week that I was going to use as our intro today is just a little bit too large of a file for StreamYard to accept, at least with our current subscription level. But maybe I can just kind of shorten the initial like 30 seconds where it has kind of that loading screen, and just kind of squeeze it down so that it's more like a 30-second intro, and then maybe it will be happy with it.
Cut a few frames out of it, see how it lands, you know.
Moving right along, we started with our good, happy sandwichy bits, and then I probably derailed us, or one of us, or both of us was out of sync with the screen, with the happy, tasty things in life. The current events type of thing, I don't want to spend too long on it, and it's kind of, I don't know that it's a not so good thing or even a looking like a good thing kind of thing. But in Japan, their Supreme Court has ruled that it is unconstitutional to deny a same-sex marriage within the confines of Japanese law. And even though that is not necessarily saying that same-sex marriage is constitutional, activists within Japan are saying that it is, at the very least, a step forward, and they are celebrating and happy about that fact. And I have kind of the same feeling I had maybe a year and a half before in the United States, where the Supreme Court ruled that same-sex marriage was in fact constitutional and legalized federally. So let it be written, so let it be done.
Yes.
But like a year and a half before that, I had that same kind of like, we're getting there. Keep going. Yes. I have that same kind of feeling.
One can hope. It has that feeling of, I mean, movement in societies is often measured in millimeters or inches.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, in Japan, it would be millimeters.
Yeah. Yeah, valid point. The measurement, as opposed to those of us who are still backward in that English system of doing things. But at the same time, I do think that there is a feeling of progress moving, forward, kind of across, the world. On the other hand, there are times when I sit there and look and realize, a metric joke. That's what we did. Our jokes go by many metrics. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
So sometimes they venture into the liquid measurement realm. They have transfigured from solid to liquid, and now we have to incorporate a whole new system of measurement.
Yes. Japan is a country that is definitely very, very, much like the UK or other places, is caught up in its traditions and in its long-held societal values, but they're slowly catching on. Now, if they would just get their shit together on trans issues, that would be really nice. That country is kind of staggering in that particular world.
It's kind of an interesting place where Japan is at, as far as what we in the West would call LGBTQ issues, because they are, societally speaking, not so much like outwardly, vehemently opposed to the existence of said persons, but it is at the very, very, very least very counterintuitive to what is expected of you as a member of Japanese society. As an offspring of one's parents, if you do not fulfill the usual obligations of X, Y, and Z, which is usually, being married and having a good job and or having a family. Like, you have to have at least 2 of those 3 things to be really like, oh, so you're doing well.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh, so you're what they call transgender? Oh. So I guess you're doing well for you.
And I think from the outside looking in, I think that that's kind of part and parcel of the elements of Japanese culture that I am familiar with. Now then, if somebody wants to correct me, please feel free, because, I am on the outside looking in, and most of my understanding...
We're Americans looking across to the other side of the pond.
Yeah.
Or rather, the side of the other pond, rather.
But Japan, with the exception of some of the more extreme far-right parties, has always struck me as being a country where a certain degree of quiet dismissal is every bit as dangerous as having the rest of society basically do their level best to throw you out. You get excluded from quite a few things.
Yeah. And not only excluded, but if you are among that group who is being, kind of quietly discriminated against, and something untoward happens to you, and you try to get justice for said incident, or you are trying to further the rights of yourself and people like you, it might be met with a kind of erasure, I think is. But again, I don't live in Japan. I've never even been to Japan. Someday. Even though they are a little behind the times isn't maybe quite the right word, because again, we are in the West a very different culture than Japan. But in any case, I would really love to go to Japan someday, and I would hope that eventually they can come to a place of beyond a very quiet toleration, and at the same time quiet dismissal and quiet erasure of queer people. We will see what happens. It's interesting to watch Japanese media, be it animated or live action, when queer people suddenly become a part of the story, whether it's for a moment or it's a recurrent character. A couple that come to mind, but Midnight Diner on Netflix, which is a live action show all about food, and it's wonderful. There is mention of a transgender woman who is a bar owner that's just up the road from the main character, which everyone in the show calls Master affectionately, because he is a most excellent cook who may or may not be technically in hiding from the Yakuza.
Yeah.
Oh no, I yanked on my headset. Hopefully you can still hear me.
Yes.
But the way that they put them in the subtitles, they do in fact say a transgender woman who owns the bar up the road, kind of thing. But then, and I don't know that that's actually like a 1-to-1 translation from Japanese to English. It might be more American sensibilities kind of trying to find their way around what the actual Japanese is. but the way that they presented it, I mean, you know, it was just kind of an incidental thing as part of her character. And I was feeling pretty happy about that. But then later on in the episode, people are fighting in her bar, and she kind of has to have one of those moments where, you people better cut it out or get out. And they do kind of one of those things that I have come to expect from Western media when it comes to transgender women characters. She puts a knee up on the bar, and she's wearing kind of a skirt with maybe kind of a kick pleat in it. And there is either a bottle of sake or some kind of something that is like just between her legs. And I was like, unnecessary. Why?
Because
it was so inconsequential. And then they made it consequential. Like, it had nothing to do with the fight. The fight was between two presumably cis women who were saying, like, no, we said that we were going to always, you know, be on the lookout for true love, and that we wouldn't tolerate any of that matchmaking business from our mothers. We're in this together. Rah! And they were fighting over that kind of thing. So it had nothing to do with the bar owner's transness. I was a little disappointed about that. It was a very quick moment. It didn't linger too long, but at the same time, I was like, yeah, it is still Japan. Okay.
I mean, you keep in mind that one of the key elements of, and again, here's where my love of, you know, Japanese bands comes in, but you know, the visual kei movement is built around an awful lot of androgyny and an awful lot of trans sort of elements. I mean, when you look at Yoshiki from X Japan doing a lot of photo shoots as a princess, or some of the other elements that go with it, in popular culture, it's accepted because in popular culture, if you are a star, you're given that space to express yourself, because in a way, you're the person that allows others to have the opportunity to live through you. And, you know, keep in mind that also means that this is also the same person who wrote a piece of music for the freaking emperor. It speaks to elements of the culture. And again, this is where I, as a person from the outside looking in, sits there and goes, kind of, maybe not, I don't know what's going on, I'll watch the show. And it's the reason why I sit here and I'm critical of how it is that laws are written in Japan. But the culture seems to, and much the same in a way as the United States, where we can draw that parallel. The culture of the United States seems to be headed toward hopefully a more open and broader definition of who gets to be an active participant in society. But the people who are making the laws, they have some fucking issues. So, you know.
That right there, I think, is kind of a key phrase, is, you know, who is and is not allowed to be an active, contributive member of society. It's not entirely unbiased. But, you know, it's, I don't know. I don't feel like I can end that on any kind of note that is, you know, like, well, I mean, they're trying.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same feeling as I have about us here in the United States. Like, well, it's better than it was in the 80s.
Well,
like,
yeah,
but just by saying that, like, it's almost just as bad.
I think that there's an element, and again, this goes hand in hand with our culture and also to a degree in the culture at large. We're now seeing the growth of a broader popular culture that is now becoming a bit more of the world culture that is more inclusive, at least in my eyes. And I think that there is a generation growing up in that's sitting around going, well, why shouldn't we be allowed to fill in the blank? And a lot of that is exist as a person loving the way that I want to be, or having the identity that I want to have, or the identity that fits me better than the one that I was given. And viewing that as being, you know, part of the natural order, as opposed to generations previous who view that as being a big shock to the system. And, again, I find myself this is my classic supervillain moment of, it's going to take a little bit more of certain generations falling by the wayside before we can actually see that growth become a bit more going from the popular culture into the actual legal elements of society. I'm hoping that'll be sooner rather than later, but that's just...
That's kind of an interesting thing that I'm going to take note of, and that I would like to look at in a later prosperity episode rather than a popcorn episode, is kind of pop cultural acceptance versus legislative acceptance.
Oh, yes.
Beyond acceptance, but I don't know if embracing is quite the right word. Because again, like you don't necessarily have to agree with the way that someone lives in order to treat them with civility. And of course, the asterisk on that statement is if the way that they lives is not, focused around the intent to harm someone else. I'm always thinking a lot about making very progressive sounding statements that are very, touchy-feely, accepting of everyone, and, well, I can't tell you how to think, I can't tell you how to live kind of statements, because I am very wary that those type of statements are exactly what are being, I was about to use a kind of racist phrase. I was going to say shanghaied, but we'll say kidnapped. Kidnapped phrases from the progressive left into the more extreme alt-right type of spaces, using that type of language to kind of place themselves, to put themselves in a position where people in the center, people who are diehard centrists, can kind of say like, well, they are making this point, and isn't that exactly what you said about the people that you're fighting for, and you're not letting them use the same type of language to justify their ideas and behaviors. So it's a tricky thing, and it's something that I think a lot about, and I think that idea is one of the major things that gives me pause before I reply to someone on Twitter. I'm not really on Facebook anymore. I am on slightly more on Twitter, but also in YouTube comments. I think I don't know. I always think I take a second. I'm like, can you try to use this against me? Or can you try to use this against the movements that I am trying to help progress? And so I think the caveat kind of always has to be like the focal point of the identity or the behavior with which you live your life. The focal point of that cannot be the elimination of someone else or the harm of someone else. And I'm sure that's something that will be kind of distilled down and refined a little bit more as per rule number 6 of the party manifesto.
Yes. I mean, when in doubt, we always are sitting around doing our level best to learn. And I think that there's a comment from, I don't know, I go back and forth with this particular writer, but there was a comment in one of their books. Robert Heinlein made a comment about that true wisdom is really an awful lot about unlearning an awful lot of the falsehoods that you learned as a child. And I think that is something that the most recent generations, at least in certain areas, have gotten better about. And then there are certain people who just live to exist within the structure of those falsehoods, because it's all I've known, it's all I've ever known, and if you take me out of my comfort zone, I'm going to get violent. And I think that that is something that has to be kept in mind. When we're sitting around here and we're happily prattling on about acceptance or this or that or anything else, we are in a strange sort of way to a group of people basically accusing them of being bad people, and they find that particularly difficult.
Yes, exactly.
It's something we commented on it when we did the review of the film Assassination Nation, and it's
I was going to say, I think it was my first jump in there.
Yep, Assassination Nation, and it's something that a friend of mine, Erica, has pointed out. It's a line that comes up in that film where there's a police officer in a car as they're rioting who keeps saying over and over again, "We're good people," because
we're good people.
Everybody's
and they're harming us, and we're good people. They've driven us to this sort of thing, and he doesn't even really say they've driven us to this sort of thing. He's holding on to that idea that we're good people and we have been wronged, therefore we are justified in this retributive sort of behavior, violently retributive, but never quite going so far to say as like, we deserve to enact violence upon you because you have hurt us, and because we're the good guys, that makes you the bad guys, therefore we have this cosmological right to take revenge upon you. That's such a weird thing, though. The whole, like, because we're the good guys, that means they're the bad guys. Why are they the bad guys? Why aren't they other good guys? Why aren't they neutral guys? Why aren't they guys who just happen to be in the middle of the fucking plane? I don't know. Because,
at least in the United States, one of the things that, especially in comments when I'm sitting around talking with members of my family who live outside of the country, the term that tends to come up in terms of the view of how it is that we look at the world in America is bipolar. Things are either or. We don't do gray here. I mean, we do gray in terms of like artwork or books or things like that, but in terms of our view of ourselves, I am correct. That therefore makes the other person incorrect. And I think that over the last 30 or 40 years, that has become a bit more a part of the popular culture in the way that the world works as far as the way that we view ourselves in America. I am correct, and therefore the other person has to be wrong. And Lily, as usual, summed up my 5-minute comment in the space of just slightly, more than a sentence. Jeremy, it's always good to see you.
I'm shocked and amazed. I didn't even have to get out a Pokeball. A wild moof has appeared. No one move. No one say anything.
Don't scare the moof off.
No. He's in the hole. He's in the hole.
Okay. But I think there's a bipolar view of the way that we view the world, and Lily summed it up. The way that power works is that, especially in a particularly fascist sense, is that it's built in a black and white dichotomy. We have to be correct because we are who we are, and therefore that makes you wrong.
I think he's dead.
And therefore we get
no.
Somebody check on him. Somebody send someone.
No, Dave is okay. I can't get this thing to stay in your ear.
Stick in his ear.
For whatever reason, both of us keep freezing a lot today. This doesn't happen typically. But yes, no. As you said, Lily did kind of sum it up. The whole binarism of us versus them, and good guys versus bad guys, and oh nope, it's going back in my ear. I know I'm always on and on and on about destroying the binary, but this is one of those instances where I think it absolutely does need to be destroyed, or at the very least challenged, within everyone's own mind, because most things are not that fucking simple. It's just a matter of fact, and T1J puts it so fucking perfectly in almost every single video he does. Like, well, like most things, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to link to a number of T1J videos that I've referenced throughout the entire 2+ months that we've been doing this series. There will always be more. Well, good and evil dichotomies aside, that does kind of lead us to kind of an interesting segue
Yes.
into our main topic today, which is who are the villains that inspired us to supervillainy. And that's, again, it's the way that we use the term supervillainy on this show is kind of a funny thing, because sometimes it's a sort of tongue-in-cheek way, because we just sort of like the aesthetic of the evil character in stories. But at other times, it's very much used in the sense of it's countercultural to what the people in our country, at least, who have the vast majority of media and political power, we're using the term supervillainy in a kind of countercultural sense to what they want. They want, again, the increasement, that's not a word at all. They want more unfettered capitalism, not less unfettered capitalism. They want more influence of religion, specifically Christian religion, on the legislation that rules all of the people, or that governs the people of the United States, even those who are not of that same religion. And that's not the same thing as letting one's religion inform the way that one approaches legislation, whether that's to writing it, presenting it, gathering up support for it from constituents or from fellow members of the government. That's not quite the same thing. But using it as kind of the baseline across the board, there are some questions. There's some questions that need to be asked, and should not just be kind of pushed off to the wayside for fear of treading on religious freedom.
I think that the element of trying to, again, it's a matter of comfort. When people have grown up with a particular belief system, one of the things that we're very, very good at doing is programming people to fall in line with their symbols. A flag, a cross, a crescent moon, whatever religious symbol that you want to use, whatever nationalistic symbol that you want to use, has become a means or a method of, the second I pull this out, we stop thinking and we start acting.
Mm-hmm.
And that is always going to be something to kind of keep an eye out for. Like, literally, I was sitting down and one of the things that popped up on my YouTube videos was a video of Blair White talking about Steven Crowder. And Blair White is, well, definitely
many things.
Yeah, a number of things. And Blair is sitting there wearing a shirt that is basically made out of an American flag. And immediately, to me, I'm like, that is a huge red flag of, my symbol is basically saying I am superior simply because of the fact that I'm wearing this shirt. And then an hour later, I am walking out of the shop, and this guy is giving me hard eyes because I'm wearing a mask, apparently. And he's got like an American flag tattooed up his arm, and he's got an American flag mask and all these other things, because clearly if I'm just wandering around wearing a mask, then I'm some kind of weird, antisocial, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's such an odd feeling. Just driving around our own city, Omaha, Nebraska, which is in basically the exact center of the country. It's a very odd feeling for me to see someone with an American flag. If it's just like a decal on the back of their car or their truck, it like the feeling that I'm describing intensifies if it's a truck versus a sedan.
Yeah.
I
It's
rightly or wrongly feel that kind of like, okay, yeah, we get it. You're obsessively patriotic, kind of to the point of blindness. Okay. Because I just don't know that I have ever encountered a person who, in my lifetime anyway, has been sporting a symbol that is the American flag, or no, I don't see the eagle in the bald eagle invoked as often. It's mostly just the American flag, the red, white, and blue. Whether it's upon their person or on their truck or something that they're carrying, if they have an American flag anywhere near them, almost always they are a little bit of a shit given. And that's really unfortunate, because like I would love to see the flag that represents the country that I live in, the country that I was born in, the country that I would like to think is, good to some extent, as far as being a place where people are free to be themselves, as far as being free to pursue the things that matter to you. But again, all of that is very much tied up in what we all kind of grew up with in this country, the heavy individualism and the whole bootstrap mentality. I want to be able to look at that symbol, and not only I would settle for feeling nothing, like just like, oh yep, that's an American flag. I'd settle for feeling that. But it would be nice if I could look at that and say, ah, yes, this is the country that I live in. This is the country that I was born in, and the country that I am proud to be a part of. But unfortunately, I don't feel that, and it's a very mixed. It's full of a lot of mixed emotions. Not just seeing it separate of any individual person, but especially when I see it attached to a person. I have that, as I am one to say on this program, that knee-jerk reaction. However I actually act in the real world, my knee-jerk gut reaction is, oh, that's a person who is blindly patriotic and doesn't give a fuck about, anyone who is actually having a hard time in this country. They just want to hold on to that mantra of, what is it? Jesus, guns, and I'm sure that there's always a third thing. Jesus and guns, at the very least. And that's my immediate gut reaction when I see that. And I hate that. That's a really distressing feeling. I don't want to feel that about other people when I know nothing about them. I know nothing about this person. They could be an incredibly empathetic lawyer, I don't know, who does a lot of pro bono cases citizenship cases. Go ahead, David. I'm just
I think that part of it is that, and we'll eventually get back to the honest to God subject we were going to talk about, but I think that part of it is that certain words, because a certain political party in the United States has taken control of them, have become loaded with a degree of meaning that they were never intended to have, like patriotism, or the idea of country, or I'm reasonably certain that if Jesus were to arrive tomorrow, if there's a judgment day, I'm reasonably certain I've got some shit to answer for. But I'm reasonably certain I am also going to be farther back in line, sitting back, relaxing, and going, hey, man, you got some popcorn? Ted Cruz is about to get up there soon. There are people who have missed...
Just the small little bit of, yeah.
Look,
devious pleasure in other people's pain, but in our minds, deserved pain.
I wouldn't mind the trip to the gallows if I get to watch a few other people go ahead of me. If they're on my list, I'm okay with it. To me, I think that the meaning of some of these words has become twisted into a form of, the second again, we're back to symbols. If I use these symbols or if I use these words, we stop thinking and you start following. And I think that that's very unfortunate, because if you look at the way that America, at least in the broadest sense of the way that we view it, exists, it is a place where we should be allowed to sit down and have a reasonable, honest discussion about the things that we are going to do. But the second that we say the flag, God, the military, or the police, you're not allowed to. There is no criticism. All of those things are considered to be inviolate in terms of the overall conversation. And to me, that's part of the reason that I view myself as a villain, because there are times when you have to sit there and go, self-defense should be allowed as a defense when you're dealing with the police. Yeah. Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah, it gets to a strange place when the symbol becomes the end-all be-all, rather than the values behind the symbol, rather than the catalyst that brought the symbol into being. Because when you're relying too heavily on a symbol, like a symbol, is good because it can serve as a unifying factor, a unifying visual metaphor for people to rally around. At the same time, if the symbol itself becomes the end-all be-all, then people have lost all the thought that went into behind it, all of the intention that went in behind it. And if all you're worried about is the symbol, then anyone, no matter their intention, no matter their feelings toward the symbol and what made that symbol possible, they can just come in, invoke that symbol, and put whatever they want to attach to it. And if all people are concerned with is the symbol, I can make words.
I feel you.
Me talk pretty one day. If all they're concerned with is the symbol, and someone is just throwing whatever the fuck they want into that symbol and then presenting it like blah, blah, and people go, yeah, sure, blah, blah, because symbol. It's not productive. It's not creative in the sense that it is additive.
Yeah. To me, okay, and here's where I'm going to jump into what we originally considered to be the topic for this conversation, the villains.
Right?
Villains. To me,
tell me a villain.
Tell you a villain, because it kind of goes hand in hand with this. One of my all-time favorite, and this is, again, I would love to sit down and have a table conversation with some of the people who are here, both you and the people who are in the chat right now, and have a table conversation just about this character. And that character is Ozymandias from Watchmen. if you've not read Watchmen, I apologize, but I'm about to spoil the shit out of a lot of it. And if you haven't read or watched Watchmen, seriously, the fuck is wrong with you? It's easily one of the best things I've read, maybe in 40 years. Cat is frozen up on my screen again. Hopefully, Cat exists and can hear me. There we go. I can see Cat.
Wait a second. So did I pop away for a second there? Like, was I frozen? Did I just totally go away?
You were frozen, and I'm not certain if you were making any comments or if you heard what I said. But
no, I was on mute so that you could say your words without interruption from moi.
But Ozymandias,
no, I was actually jumping away to show notes, and so apparently that is not something I can do when I am streaming from my phone.
No,
duly noted for future reference. The phone is solely for the camera work, and if I want to do anything so that I can look at my show notes so that I sound like I know what I'm talking about, that will have to be on my laptop, which would normally be here at my right hand, but is not currently.
Yep.
But yes, no, I was. Please continue, and then I have a follow-up thought on Alan Moore.
Yep. Ozymandias as a character is, in terms of human capability, he is at the absolute peak. He is the smartest natural human on that planet. He is probably the most agile and strongest as well. And he has a plan to save the goddamn world. And there is a great scene both in the actual graphic novel of Watchmen and the film, where he's walking out of a meeting with a group of CEOs where he's announced that he has a plan to create a limitless, free source of power, and the people who are the CEOs of these companies are losing their shit, and talking about how they're going to basically brand him as a socialist and a communist, and really do their level best to ruin him for this. And then, of course, he's arranged it so that they'll all be assassinated during this meeting. And this is why Ozymandias is one of my favorite hero slash anti-hero villains ever. Because he also has a plan to save the world by getting everybody to look away from other nations and instead worry about what might be coming toward us from outside of our world. Long story short, he kills millions of people, but he probably has saved the entire goddamn planet. Also, Ozymandias gave me what is probably my favorite, maybe reading moment ever, because the heroes of the story are coming up to save the world from his evil plan, and they come charging in and say, all right, so when are you going to do it? And he just stops and goes, when am I going to do it? I'm not a Republic serial villain. I did it 35 minutes ago. And I remember reading that at that moment, and they cut to the next page, you flip it over, and you see the devastation he just caused with his plan. And I remember literally jumping out of my chair and screaming, yes! Because somebody had finally broken that fucking trope of the heroes come in and save the day at the absolute last second. I'm like, if I was a hyper-intelligent supervillain, I would have trashed this shit an hour before you guys would have arrived. And that, to me, is one of the reasons I immediately went, he's a character that you can relate to, that you can aspire to be, and is also a character who does the thing that you always wanted to see another character do. And to me, that was like an aspirational moment of sitting around going, if I had the power and realized that this was my only option to save the planet, would I take it? And you got to ask yourself, if you're going to sit down and take on the mantle of a supervillain, you know, I don't view myself as the bad guy. The rest of the world will, but if I pull this off and save the planet in the process, was it worth doing? And in this case, the answer is yes. Yes, it is. And, you know, I'm obviously not going to have the power to kill millions of people, thank God. But,
yeah, I would, if I would have one hope for the majority of us on this planet, I hope that most of us never have that power.
Oh, dear God, yeah. There are moments...
Including myself.
There are moments when you think about... There's another book. It's written by Chuck Palahniuk. I can't remember the title of it right now, but one of the characters learns a poem that is actually a magic spell that kills people when you think of them and read this poem. And there is a moment during this where he's walking down the street and somebody irritates him and the poem runs through his head and he can't stop himself. And he kills like 30 fucking people.
Ah, shit.
In the space of like 4 pages. And you realize that power
Don't think about the thing. Okay, I'm not thinking about the thing. Shit, I thought about the thing.
Right. Don't think of the number 3.
Ah!
Right. It has that level of it. And also, Richard just made a great point. Ozymandias was amoral rather than evil. And here's where we have to come up with a definition. Morality is the overall rules of how a society decides to run itself. And Ozymandias, by any standard, is absolutely amoral. He is also remarkably ethical in his own rather unique way. He has a set of rules that he follows to himself, and those ethics are very key and very important. He is probably, the irony is I can picture him and Hannibal Lecter having a great dinner together because they believe in the idea of treating people with kindness and treating people. The idea of noblesse oblige goes hand in hand with both of those characters. Mm-hmm. I am stronger and more powerful than you, so therefore I will treat you with kindness rather than lording it over you. And I think that Ozymandias...
An interesting decision, no.
What's that?
I said an interesting decision, no.
Yeah. Mind you, also, if I was sitting down to Hannibal Lecter, I really wouldn't ask where dinner came from. So anyway, that is my first choice as a villain that absolutely inspired me to consider the notion of being a proper villain. So, your turn.
Well, first I would like to jump way, way back, and I accidentally did it when I was thumbing things around. Rick, I don't say this with any hint of irony. Thank you for your service. I myself am the child of someone who served in the military for a long time. And so the military is something that I have. I don't even know that mixed feelings is the proper way to put it. I am aware of what it is and what it is capable of, I think is the proper way to put it. And the fact of the matter is that it is capable of facilitating, let's say, facilitating moments of great empathy and also moments of great destructiveness. And sometimes it is just because of the nature of the chain of command. Sometimes that is a good thing. Sometimes that is a bad thing. Because sometimes people are compelled to do things that they might personally feel is more morally, ethically incorrect, but because of the chain command, they are compelled to do it. And other times, I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought there. It's sort of it's a vast topic that we're not going to cover today. But in any case, you know, I do have respect for anyone who does active service in the military, and hell, for anyone who does any kind of service that doesn't see action. I respect that you're doing that work. At the same time, I cannot ignore that. Unfortunately, a lot of the nature of war is the perpetuation of continually trying to grab at something, whether it is political power, whether it is material resources like oil, or if it is merely to boost morale within one's own country. That's kind of what it always ends up being. Yes, some of it can be the protection of what one holds of what a person holds dear. Because yeah, every now and again, someone there are individuals and groups that just are angry at this other individual or group over here, and so they're going to attack it. And they are going to protect from said thing because you're just being angry and irrational. All right, fair enough. That's part of it, but I can't ignore that a lot of what war is. Forget about the intentions of it. What is the effect of it? What is the effect of war? The effect of war is what, and of course I'm going to bring in what we just spoke about in Us Three Blokes. War, the effect of war is what Lilu sees when she is continuing to go through her learning of the English language and of Earth's history. And she looks up the word war. And what does she see there? She sees people, dismembering each other, people committing unspeakable acts of violence, people callously dropping weapons of mass destruction on other people's for the sake of kind of whatever. It almost doesn't matter what their purpose was, but the fact they were able to do that at all, it brings tears to her eyes. And she's the supreme being. She is the one who is supposed to be, according to this prophecy, every 5,000 years, protecting life against this all-consuming evil. And she asks the question, what is the point of protecting life when all you do is destroy it? And of course, that is not the only thing that there is to humanity. That is not the only thing that there is to being human. There are so many other aspects of being alive and experiencing humanity than this cynical cycle of witnessing violence and all at once becoming just totally distraught and sort of numb and indifferent to it. There's more to life than that. I lost what I was saying.
It's one of those days where you're happily buzzed.
No, it is one of those days. It's the pata negra.
Yeah.
Okay, it make my brain a little loopy. In any case, while I do have that respect for the military, while I do acknowledge that occasionally there will be conflict over things that we'll call vaguely reasonable, fighting over limited resources or whatever. But when it comes right down to it, especially right now, there aren't limited resources. There are limited resources. We have enough for everyone. We have enough for everyone on this planet, okay? Don't think about fossil fuels. Take that out of the equation. But everything else, for the moment, water, food, definitely, space to live that is, reasonable for a reasonable climate and geography to put someone to live in. We have enough of that for everyone to be able to live comfortably. And saying that we don't, it's disingenuous. And if you actually believe that, then you are saying that without really knowing what is available within the world. Anyway, to be a villain. What does it mean to be a villain? I think a villain is to be not only acting with a little bit of self-interest, but also acting against the interests of the powers that be. What I tend to refer to in the descriptions of these videos as the crud bucket powers that be. And you know, we like to adopt the trappings of the kind of cartoony supervillain. We laugh because if we did not laugh, we would cry, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as far as what supervillains I would say influenced me, obviously all Disney villains ever. I'm actually writing a video right now, like, here are all the cartoon villains that made me not only gay, very gay, but also villainous and strangely anti-capitalist, which is weird when you think about villains like in The Fifth Element. Zorg is the uber capitalist, and yet I very much I identify with the archetype of the villain. Part of that is because I think what do I want to call this? A kind of haughty bemusement with what everyone views as the status quo, and sort of chortling internally or externally, depending on what kind of villain you are, at the reasons that people view that as the status quo. Do they say, oh, well, it is the way it is because it's the way it is. It is what it is. And the villain, I think, would say, oh, but is it? Is it the way it is because it's the way it is? Or is it the way it is because you choose it to be the way that it is? Or because it's the way that I might choose it to be? Do you think that perhaps there is some flexibility here? Do you think that perhaps there is a different way that things could be done that isn't necessarily your way? Do you think?
There's always the notion of sitting around and going, what's our other option? We have this option and we have this option. Now, what's the third option that we can triangulate from? And nobody ever really seems to be that interested in the third option. So,
what could the third option be? Why not look at the third option? Again, binaries. Quit thinking so two-dimensionally. At the very least, think three-dimensionally, because then you not only have this and this, but you also have this. I know that wasn't perfectly demonstrated. But also, by the way, hello Xerxes. Nice of you to join us. Happy to see you. I'm trying to think of besides Disney villains who particularly spoke to me as a child. Anyway, you'd think that I would like have this down pat, but I think it's something so subconsciously imbued that even when I do write stuff down, which I did actually write stuff down for this episode, it doesn't all quite come to the surface readily. Do you have anybody that you would say, like in live action movies, would kind of be like your model supervillain, or live action television?
Yeah, if I'm going to sit around and talk about live action television or film, in terms, okay, and here's where we also have to remember that, to me, a villain is also a sense of style that I enjoy looking at and going, God damn, you make evil look good.
The aesthetic, I cannot lie. The aesthetic is a large part of the draw to the supervillainy. I can't help it. Like, yes, superheroism with the flowing capes and the primary colors. No. Give me green. Give me purple. Give me aubergine.
Yes. I'm going to sit around and talk about one of the coolest, most stylish supervillains I've ever seen. who is clearly not a good person, clearly does not have good motives, but yet you can't help but sit there and go, you know who you are, and you own it on a level. In the comics, he's called Top Dollar. In the film, he's mostly just listed as the bad guy, but in the film, he's played by Michael Wincott, who is one of my favorite character actors. And it's Top Dollar from The Crow. That whole scene, there's several scenes where he's just like, he makes evil look good. I was sitting down watching, getting my mind together for this episode, and I was watching some of his scenes from The Crow on YouTube. And there's a scene where he and his paramour/sister are hanging out and looking at this woman and going, I think we broke her. But there's also that, and there's a scene later where he's sitting around and somebody's explaining to him that one of the people that's part of his underworld, etc., has just died. And he goes, well, let's have ourselves a nice, happy, introspective moment for Tintin. And then knocks out this line of cocaine that would kill just about anyone. And then later on, he has what is still, I think, my favorite villain speech maybe ever. Like, Ozymandias still can't top this. There's the scene where all the bad guys are getting collected for Devil's Night, and he has this scene where he just stops, looks at the entire table, and goes, because you have to remember, greed is for amateurs. Chaos, discord, anarchy. Now that's fun. And you just sit there and go, fuck yeah, I'll follow you right out the door right now. I am so there.
Here's my wrist. Would you like to tattoo whatever your emblem is on it? I know that I said earlier about not just totally falling in love with a symbol, but
he is that
there is a kind of succubal, incubal lure to villainy that some of us are a little more prone to following than others, perhaps.
And he's like a classic. He strikes me as the sort of character who would have done well in the White Wolf World of Darkness. He really is that sort of he is that charisma of evil, that thing that says, why can't you do the thing? Do the thing. And
you say that I cannot, but I can. So what does that say about you?
Right. And I think that that is part of the element of, and that, to me, that's part of the reason that I identify with what I think of as villains, in that in order to do great things, sometimes you have to ride a nice edge of a right and wrong that is both something that the way you affect everybody else, but the way it affects you. And it's very clear that he made a decision a long, long time ago that he was going to be the person that he is, and he makes no exceptions about it. And in a very twisted sort of way, I have to respect that. I think that owning up to, this is who I am, this is what I do, and I make no excuses for it whatsoever, in a world where we do nothing but make excuses, is really fucking refreshing. And as somebody who and also I think that there's a certain amount of creative jealousy there, in that he is that character I really wish I had fucking written. Because, if you sit there and the hero is doing good things, and he's always doing, you need somebody who will push the hero to the very ultimate edge of what they can possibly be, both in terms of what they do in terms of skills, but also in terms of who they are as a person. And Top Dollar is absolutely one of those characters that does that for somebody.
Are you the supervillain that can push Superman to the point of murder?
Right. There's another one that I was thinking about that's very obvious that everybody tends to grab onto, and I'm avoiding him specifically because of that. Joker is a character that gets...
Yep. I was wondering when we were going to get there. If you hadn't gone there, I was just about to go there.
Yep. Hey, if you want to go there...
Specifically when you mentioned, chaos, discord, as kind of these overarching ideals. Joker, I will not lie. I cannot tell a lie. Is definitely in my top 10, if not my top 5, villains of all time. And of course, there are 100 different Jokers as far as which medium you're talking about, which writer you're talking about. In my mind, they're all kind of smooshed together into one thing, and kind of the dominating character archetypes that are playing with him in my mind are kind of a combination of Mark Hamill for Batman the Animated Series, and then of course the Killing Joke.
Yeah.
And the cartoon, not the comic. And oh god,
I think I know what you're gonna say.
Hayden Christensen, is that his name?
Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger, Jesus Christ. Hayden Christensen is a completely different person.
Yeah.
Heath Ledger plus Mark Hamill smooshed together is my ideal Joker. And I would say that even Joker is not perfect in his supervillainy, because I think the ideal supervillain is one that is not so attached to the label of supervillain that it would prevent them from committing a certain action that might be considered, heroic or something. And I don't know. This whole show is kind of teasing out what is that? What is a supervillain? What is a social justice activist
I've got one
that cannot, fight for what they believe in, do what is, not necessarily considered culturally correct or culturally empathetic. They might do what is technically the right thing, and people might begrudgingly grant them that, but at the same time, they're still mad at them. But they can do that, but also they are not so attached to the countercultural narrative that they, when the moment comes, can't do something that is within the realm of cultural acceptance if they see it to be the right thing.
Yep. Because my personal one, thinking of a villain who also works in terms of being a character with an eye towards social justice, probably maybe my all-time favorite villain / anti-hero. Of course, this depends upon who's writing him, but Eric Magnus Lensor, a.k.a. Magneto, has the best backstory for a reason why it is that somebody would be doing the shit that he does.
Right?
I mean, sitting around and going, well, let me see, I was part of one persecuted minority. In the comics, it alternates between him being either Jewish or Romani, although primarily it's Romani.
Either way.
Yeah, either way.
I mean, on the one hand, you have the one that is more, the one that was more publicized and more historically remembered. Not a lot of people know who the Romani are as an ethnicity, as a culture, but also not a lot of people remember that they were a particular group that were, marked as an outsider, marked as something that was staining the purity of Germanic culture. Please continue.
Yep. And when you consider, okay, I was part of one particular minority that was driven almost to extinction, and now I'm part of another minority that clearly stands out in terms of our existence in relation to humans, being a mutant who can manipulate magnetism to the point where he could probably physically alter the planet if he felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
He's a remarkably powerful character. Would
you say that he has a magnetic personality? I'm not sorry.
The pain. But I think that he's a very charismatic character. He's a great character in terms of when you look at the fact that he's standing up there and going, "This happened once before, and I am not going to let this shit happen again." And anybody I think who had ever experienced the concentration camp experience has a pretty fucking valid right to feel that. And he is also somebody who is not so much a villain that he drives away the people closest to him.
Mm-hmm.
He is trying to create something but doesn't really know how to do it because he spends... I think I mentioned it earlier or maybe in part of the chat, but part of the problem is that as a villain, villains are commonly viewed as destructive types of characters. Mm-hmm. I'm going to break the world, now you put it back together.
Yeah.
And Magnus is a character who has an idea of what he wants to see the world to be, and he has no idea of how to actually achieve that. He's the general who wins the war, and what he needs is a politician that will align everything so that way after the war is over, everything works. And to me, I think that's what makes him a wonderfully flawed and amazing villain character. Because
and across
why he does it,
across different series, across different mediums, across different iterations of his character with different writers, and in some cases actors or voice actors at the helm. I think he's a very interesting character because, oh God, thoughts. Where did they go? Where do they come from?
I feel your pain.
Oh, Christ on a cracker. I swear that I had a fucking thought here. I'm so mad.
I know this pain.
Come on, brain. You were talking about we were talking about where he comes in. I know what I was going to say. Not only is he an interesting character in that he doesn't want to just destroy stuff, he also wants to build something new. He doesn't want to just destroy for the sake of destroying. He wants to kind of wipe the slate clean for what he sees as the better route to go as far as humanity is concerned. Because non-mutants are kind of a thing of the past. And again, this kind of varies from iteration to iteration, but mutant kind is the future. We have evolved past Homo sapien, and we need to get going with moving forward from that with mutant kind. I think that Magneto is kind of an interesting character in that he is often put at the forefront of a progressive movement, but he's usually depicted as an older character, like not just like one generation before the lot of young people, but like 2 generations before. He's not some young punk usually. That's not how he's usually depicted. He's not some young punk who's saying, "Fuck all the old people, anarchy, because you old bastards don't know anything about anything, and you're all concerned with greed and capitalism and imperialism, and just fuck you all." But it's not like that. He's an older character who oftentimes has a lot of younger people rallying around him and pushing forward this cause that he is promoting. And I think that's kind of interesting.
And I think he's a character who has an obvious cause. He has a reason to do it. But the problem is that he, aside from sitting around and fighting against something, and he knows what he's for, but he doesn't quite know how to get to the next stage of it. And that always makes for, I think that is part of the reason that it's a great dichotomy between him and Xavier. If the two of them could actually work together, they could do something amazing. The problem is that both of them view the other as being a little too much of fill in the blank. Xavier, Magneto as being too destructive. Magneto views Xavier as being too passive, and it becomes a major issue.
Do you think that maybe Magneto is always he always has a little bit of hope that Charles is going to come in and fill in the blanks of whatever is left once Magneto has done what he thinks is the appropriate action to kind of get us a new base, clean slate. That even if Charles was protesting before, he'll come around, and he'll be around when Magneto is and his team of misfits, whoever they happen to be in that iteration, once they have done what they came to do, he hopes that Charles will come around to kind of help take care of the bureaucratic side of things.
You know, I think that he is aware, especially toward the tail end of the X-Men films, and also in, you know, the comic series and everything else. I think that he's aware at the tail end of it of his limitations, that he's a little too full of anger to be able to build properly. But that's also what makes for a great pairing of those two characters. Xavier wants to heal, Magneto wants to destroy, and when they're both looking at each other, it creates a major issue, but one of them has to deal with the outcome of the other, then they're ready, and they're ready to go.
Yeah.
And I think that makes for a great heroic/villainous pairing. There are two characters that couldn't exist without each other. And also, I look at the actors who get to play Magneto, and I'm like, okay, Ian McKellen, Michael Fassbender. Wow, Jesus, God Almighty! That's
Sir Ian and Sir Pat Stew. Was there ever a more perfect superhero supervillain dichotomy?
They really do. I think that getting the right people to play the part is absolutely what made those characters stand out for me. And Ian McKellen owns every moment of it. Michael Fassbender owns every moment of it. And Michael Fassbender in First Class, you can feel that anger and that energy just crackling through him, because especially in the opening scenes where he's hunting Nazis. And
it's kind of hard not to like feel the heroic swelling of the chest when it becomes like, we're hunting Nazis. I want you to bring. I want 5 Nazi scalps.
Yep.
For every man I'm sending out.
Yep. And to me, I think that is, we can all empathize with that. I think the idea of having gone through a tragedy on that level, and then turning around and going, "Oh yeah, I am definitely going to make sure that I sort this shit out with some people who messed with me." And he really does. I mean, the opening scene, and also the scene where he basically drives that coin through Kevin Bacon's head. It's terrifying, and it's horrible, and it's appropriate, and you kind of want to more.
I just remembered that scene.
Yeah, and it's one of those
really
where,
excited.
Yeah, it's one of those where you sit there and think, is revenge always the best option? No. Did it bring his mom back? No. Did it make you feel better? Yes. that I can't. As much as I want to sit here and claim to be above a lot of things, I have to admit I would have found that moment real fucking satisfying.
Hey, if there is one thing that supervillains are good at, it is acknowledging the dark places that exist within us as humans. We don't always necessarily have to act on them, but I think acknowledging them is important. And I think that's one of the reasons, not only why exploring the stories and the backstories and, just the implications of the existence of villains in storytelling, I think it's important not only to go over that, but also to explore, well, what if we did give in to those dark impulses? What if we really, really want to give in to those dark impulses, but we choose not to? What pulls us back from giving into those dark impulses? And when are those dark impulses led by, let's say, a more altruistic sense of character? And it, for that matter, can it ever be?
Yeah.
Can you act, as a supervillain, but you're doing it for the greater good? What you were talking about earlier, you killed 1 million people, but you saved billions more. Hell, I mean, that's kind of the whole, not the whole thing, but part of the Thanos storyline, with snuffing out a percentage of existence to satisfy the idea that there are limited resources and that there are not enough to go around, which is incorrect, but you get the idea.
But the entire notion of sitting there and going, hey, what if we just, redistributed resources so that way the ruling classes didn't have nearly so much, and didn't have to control them such a way that, there basically became a form of societal control on the people underneath them. But, that's a really complicated thing to snap to. Killing half the population across the universe, that's a really easy thing to cough up in your brain. And I think that is a kind of part and parcel of the supervillain thing, is going for, it's the sin of immediacy. It's there's the great story of evil never walks up to you and says, hi, I'm evil, and we're going to do a whole bunch of evil shit. Evil is the thing that walks up to you and says, hey, I am the thing that's going to make you happiest right now, in this moment. And then after you've done it, there's no real turning back from what it might have been that you did that made you happy at that moment.
Ain't that just the very son of a bitch?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have any personal experience with that at all. No, not even a little bit.
Well, and there's that meme that I sent you a while back, and I may have mentioned this in a previous episode. I don't know if Lily's still about, but if she is, thank you. The meme that says, just a casual reminder that a superhero will sacrifice you to save the rest of the world, but a supervillain will sacrifice the rest of the world to save you. All at once, I'm like, I love that. But also, like, I don't know. I feel like it could go either way with both superheroes and supervillains. I feel like heroes could, feel that, like, look, I cannot justify, this person hurting you or murdering you in order to save people over here. I kind of have to, like, say, okay, I give up. Please let them go. And then kind of hope that I can figure out something else to save the rest of everybody else. A villain, on the other hand, would they save you to sacrifice the larger goal? Or would they have kind of that same wrestling of emotions as the superhero does? Would they say, like, no, this is a person that I personally care about, and even if I didn't, I don't know that I can justify the torture and or murder of one to save, to secure the safety of a large number of others. I think both supervillains and superheroes can go through that wrestling of emotions, and whichever side they come out on, I don't know that necessarily it makes them that decision in and of itself I don't know that it makes them a supervillain or a superhero. I don't know.
But I think that's one of the things of, if you are so invested in a person, then there is a value judgment of, all of those people over there don't matter to the world nearly as much as this person matters to me. And I think that in the end is kind of part and parcel of the supervillain element of, it's all about me. It's a very egomaniacal, it's a very self-centered particular view of the world. And I'm not necessarily saying that is inherently bad. We don't really exist in this world without ourselves. That's a very harsh reality to deal with. But, at the same time, you also have to, we were having this conversation with Starhawk a couple of weeks ago where I, reminded myself of the idea that the rate of me to move my arm also ends roughly about the same spot that my arm is contacting your nose. I have to be aware that my actions impact the people around me, and that's something that's guided my life for quite a few years. Because in the past, I have also had periods of time where it's been all about me, and I have acted in that manner, and you know what? It just didn't work out well. When it's all self-centered and when it's almost to the point of sociopathy, you might want to dial it back a little bit. The problem is when you're in that moment, it's also really hard to get away from it.
It's true. And when you're in the situation of, life or death, it's happening right now, you've got to make the decision of a lifetime in 3 seconds kind of situation. It's not such a clear-cut thing.
Yeah. And I think that again, we're still
human brain cannot necessarily process that best, even if you are technically a superhuman.
Yeah.
Or both human and machine in the case of say like Vision.
Yeah.
Or maybe not human and machine, but he's both organic and not organic.
But I think that part of that is who you are in that moment determines the decision that you're going to make. What has led you up to this particular point? And I think that is the part that makes for great storytelling, and it makes for a great characterization of somebody when you sit there and in one moment you might make a decision that turns out to be wrong. Now the question is, how do you handle that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's what makes some of these characters, I'm going to go back to Ozymandias, I'm going to go back to Magneto on this. As much as I love Top Dollar, he is clearly all about him and what he's doing, so he is not even part of this conversation. He is about the style of supervillainy, and those other two characters are about creating the mental headspace in which you can make big macro decisions based on your previous experiences or how you view the world. I think that Ozymandias sees a world where we're going to have a nuclear war and it's all going to end. So, option number one is we let it happen, or option number two is I kill off most of Manhattan, but, a few billion people survive as an end result of that.
Mm-hmm.
So pure mathematics makes perfect sense. If, on the other hand, I am one of the people who has a friend who lives in Manhattan, I'm a little pissed off about it.
But also, people are not math.
Right.
It's a hard thing. The trolley problem is a problem for a reason.
Yeah.
Rick brought up the Tick, and the Tick is one of my favorite superheroes. And I know that Amazon not too long ago finally released some episodes of that kind of revamped live action version of the Tick. Part of the reason I love the Tick as a superhero is because he is so simplistic about things, and he's kind of dumb. He's kind of dumb. There's no other way to put that. How did you put it? You can't destroy the world. That's where I keep all my stuff.
Damn right. I live here, damn it.
But even if he is in that mode of being super stuck on fighting for the freedoms of all of the individuals who inhabit said world. The Tick's idea of heroism and justice is pretty simplistic, and there's I don't know, even in the cartoon, I almost feel like it's approached with this kind of like, "Aw, you're so cute," thinking that, good and evil can exist in this way, and that you can achieve justice with just a swing of your fist, kind of thing. It's cute, not necessarily in a condescending kind of way, but in a, I wish that things were the way that you think they are, but unfortunately they are not. And I think in the character of his sidekick, we can kind of wrestle with that, like, what are you talking about? The world is not this way, and you are being ridiculous, and holy shit, we need to, like, get the fuck out of here, or we need to do the thing that can, like, solve the problem in the short term. But then also, after spending a little bit of time with that kind of simplistic idea of what is good and what is evil, what is just and what is immoral, we, even if we don't necessarily want to get to a place of thinking like the Tick does, I think we are given a little bit of hope, and that's almost worse than sitting in our cynicism of how the world is. I'm getting into, like, deep thoughts now, and I need you to take over while I eat some Reese's Puff cereal.
I think that is still the on the list of things that, to me, define good storytelling, at least in terms of a villain, is somebody who sits there and goes, wow, the world sucks under these particular sets of circumstances, and I want to change it. And again, we're back at, if you're deciding to change something that the vast majority of people view as being, just a standard part of life, you're going to be a villain. People who try social change very early on. If you were in the South in the 1840s and you were lobbying for the end of slavery, guess what? The people there thought you were a fucking villain because you're trying to overturn the economic, view of the world. And also the way that we just view people. Let's take a look at the LGBT gay rights movement in the 70s. That was something that was a massive, in the 70s even more so, because the 80s, this will sound terrible, work with me on this. The 80s had this interesting humanizing effect on the LGBT community because of the onset of AIDS. And if you could look at somebody who is in a full-blown, case of AIDS and view them as saying, they deserve this, motherfucker, you have issues.
Yeah.
It's a horrifying death. And to say that anyone deserves that pretty much tells me that, you have definitely stepped to one side or the other to such an extreme that I can't even deal with you. But in the 70s, fighting uphill at that point in time against all the propaganda that had been put against them at that point in time, they were, liberals didn't want to deal with them because they were basically being viewed as an outlier in a party that should have accepted them at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were kind of the supervillains of the left at that particular moment, because the left was like, we want to do economic and social change, except for you. Mm-hmm. You guys stay in your fucking corner. And I think that when we take a look at a lot of movements that have made big, massive social changes, at the very outset, they were not viewed in a particularly positive light. And they were the ones who stood there and went, this is messed up. The way you're treating fill in the blank is horrifying and terrible, and you need to acknowledge that. And we as a society don't deal well with acknowledging that we're doing horrible things to a group of people. I mean, we're still trying to convince ourselves that we're right in the way that we treat Native Americans here. You know? Yeah.
I mean, like, this comes nowhere close to even approaching a good place with the indigenous people of North America. But at the very least, we have the first Secretary of the Interior now, who has just been sworn in, who is a member of that. Well, granted, you know, they're not a monolith. There are many different and various peoples, but you know, from that minority has come a person who is in a position of power to not only fight for the well-being of our natural environment, but also coming at it from a place of from the perspective of a people who were very in tune and at an equilibrium with the environment in which they existed, and then were pushed aside, torn away from, pushed down, torn asunder, however you want to call it, from that environment. We have that now. That's like a tiny, teeny bit of consolation. I was going to go somewhere, and then I started thinking of her Twitter feed. There are a lot of really great photographs of her being sworn in.
Yeah.
I will put a link to her Twitter page in the show, or in the doobly-doo. I now also follow her on Twitter. This is just kind of a random aside, but I would encourage everyone to do it, especially those of us who are of the Caucasian manner. If you ever see anybody on your social medias, particularly people who are within the realm of activism, even if you don't necessarily agree with everything they say, I think it's a good idea to follow people on social media who are from different backgrounds than yourself. If nothing else, you will see what is important to those people. You will see what they are currently caring about, what is going badly for people who are within their culture and within their geographic location, what is going well for them, what is important to them, what is not important to them, for that matter, and what they're not being listened to about. And you can take those things and not just by virtue of it being something important to a minority group, but if you feel that it's something important that should be shared, you can help boost that signal. I think that is a very small, very minimal effort kind of thing that many of us can do. Whenever I am seeing things retweeted by people that I follow, like, oh, hey, this is an Indigenous person, this is a Black American, or this is someone from South America, this is someone who speaks a different language than I do, this is from someone who is of a different spiritual persuasion than myself. I follow them and I try to hear what they're saying, and if I see things that resonate with me or that I think deserve a little bit of an uptick, bam, follow, retweet. And of course, always with the asterisk caveat of, like, retweeting is not endorsement, because What is one of our rules, even though it is not in the official manifesto? Stan no one. Do not stan public figures. Maybe don't even stan people that you know. I completely got us off track. We were talking about
villains. And
yes. I mean, always. We are always talking about villains.
But villains, and also the context in which the villain exists, where the villain is created, and what makes somebody in the public eye a villain. And a lot of times, because we are who we are, we look at people who are trying to change the underlying fabric of our society and go, that person is clearly a villain.
Mm-hmm.
And because, I'm pretty comfortable at where I'm at right now. And you want to change it? No, wait, I'm comfortable. Why are you trying to change things? And that is something that any social movement is always going to be fighting uphill against. And we constantly reference
MLKJ
on
this program. He's definitely one of those people, and regardless of whether or not he was an angelic, perfect being, he was not.
Yeah.
Many of the things that he was saying was not only challenging the status quo as far as racial relations went, as far as the relations of color went. It also started to get into the relations of socioeconomic class.
Yes.
And I mean, we could get into various and sundry conspiracy theories as to, just when he was starting to really lean into the, anti-capitalism sentiments was when he was suddenly assassinated. We could get into that, but I don't think it would be particularly productive.
Yeah.
But it's worth it to bring up that one of the other things that he was challenging, besides, well, not even besides, but in relation to, because it's almost inseparable. It's almost inseparable. This socioeconomic separation, the socioeconomic difference. Viewing oneself as above or below a particular class set, it's completely intertwined and baked into the racism and colorism that has always been present since the official founding of this particular country.
Yeah.
I was taking a breath for a moment. You could have hopped in there.
Yeah, but there's a part of me. I think that also, but that goes hand in hand with the idea of our perception of ourselves versus the reality. And again, no one views themselves as the bad guy. Whatever it is that you're doing, no matter how horrific it is, you have a perfectly valid reason to do it in your mind. Might not make sense to anybody else, but to you it makes perfect sense. And America is a great example of that. We're preserving democracy by propping up dictatorships.
Things, yeah.
Because economics. I mean, if you look at, again, being a child of the 80s, there was one group that was sitting around going, let's look at the rebels in El Salvador and the terrible shit that they're doing. And then you took a look at what the death squads in El Salvador were doing, and you were going, look, one group here is doing their best to try to keep another group enslaved, and the other group is doing their level best to fight back. I know what side I'm on, which is the group that's fighting back, and it also led to the fairly entertaining period of time where you had this is that moment when you realize that you have completely fucked up in terms of making an awful lot of enemies when both the Soviet Union and are out to get you. And that was pretty much the story with the El Salvador government. The Soviet Union was definitely wanting to get a foothold in South America. And, well, the Jesuits have a long, long history of sitting around and going, okay, we're spreading religion, we're hitting the beach, we're building a school, and that's fucked up, and we are also a military order. like, you had a U.S.-backed government that was fighting a war against the Jesuit order and losing, which to me cracks me up on a very basic level. But but I think that when you sit there and you take a look at, that was the example of trying to keep something in the same place and trying to keep a status quo in place that was just plain untenable. It had reached the point where the majority of the population had said, we're done. We cannot deal with this anymore. It is past the point not just of living, but past the point where survival is now no longer possible. And you keep making it worse. And you came up with this amalgam of groups that said, we're going to fight back. And guess what? They, in the eyes of the American government, were villains. Because the U.S. government had a great relationship with the government of El Salvador at that point. Yeah. And that is a problem that we always run into, in that the leaders sit around and make great agreements with each other, and the people are sitting around going, that's fucked up. What the hell is going on? But, I cannot... Okay, again, I was just listening to Natalie Wynn ContraPoints and her take on capitalism. That's something we should probably do a whole episode on this at some point, but the economy should serve the people, not the other way around.
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
And I don't know, when you stop to think about it, I feel like most people, but maybe that's just my personal bias, I don't know, would have the opinion that, like, well, if we're going to have any kind of system of trade and exchange, which, when you get right down to it, that's what capitalism is. All it's doing is putting a standardized value on something or other so that you can exchange it for something else that has a standardized value of something or other. Ideally, you would want a system that works for the people who are utilizing that system rather than the people pleasing this system that does not actually exist outside of the characteristics and the value that we put on it. I don't know, that it on the one hand it seems kind of obvious. On the other hand, I do see how people can get sucked into the idea of, like, never-ending growth.
Yep.
Of constantly paring things down so that you can get the most out of something that you possibly can, which this jumps back a little bit earlier to something else, but the trolley problem, the I want to say Kantian idea. Somebody hit me up in the comments if I am incorrect. I'm sorry if I am. But the idea of maximizing the most amount of good for the largest portion of people, I can kind of see how that idea of morality kind of shoves its way into the idea of capitalism, which is to say that you are maximizing your profit. Because if you're maximizing your profit, technically speaking, aren't you maximizing the good of the whole, the good of the of everybody underneath your particular little branch on the tree? And it's not necessarily so in the real and working world, is it?
That's the rather unfortunate element of, and I think that it also goes hand in hand, and part of the propaganda that sells it is the old notion of, look, I understand that right now you're a low-wage slave, but when you move up and you become one of the masters, then wouldn't you like to be paying lower taxes on the money you make? Wouldn't you like to hold on to more of what it is that you have? The And that is a game that's been used to keep people under control for literally centuries. There was a period of time where we had, at least from my perspective where I'm sitting, a certain degree of equilibrium in our society in which the economy, it was a period of time where if you were making above a certain point, a significant amount of your money went back into supporting the society that allowed you to make that money in the first place. Then we had 2 Reagan administrations followed by a Bush administration, and that all shit. And
It
we're
was
now
an interesting time.
Yeah, we're currently paying, the price for deciding, no, it's probably best that people should have the possibility of unlimited wealth.
It's fine. It's totally fine.
The problem is that the vast majority of, or at least a significant part of how it is that wealth is made is by ensuring that a significant part of the population does not make a living wage. Speaking of the whole El Salvador situation, part of the reason that we had the January 6th event that we had is that people are scared and terrified because of the fact that they can't meet their fucking bills, let alone actually achieve a life that they see around them on a routine basis. You're constantly fighting uphill just to break even.
You would think that the crud bucket powers that be would get it through their thick skulls that you can't constantly be selling this idea of, again, individualism, bootstrap mentality. One day you could be one of the masters as opposed to one of the many on the, bottom 95% of the pyramid. One day this could be you, and if it could one day be you, don't you want that hypothetical you to be able to hold on to as much wealth and power? Not that they're necessarily inextricable of each other. Don't you want that to be very secure? You can't keep selling that idea, and then when so many people don't get at it, you can't be all that surprised when people are mad that they didn't get at it. Whether they think it's because of foreigners, whether they think it's because of a degenerate element of the population, such as queer people, such as neurodivergent people, such as people who are in an ethnic minority. It doesn't matter why you think that. It's always going to eventually come to the point you're like, hey, I've been sold this idea, and I realize that I have given away my mental monies for it, and yet I did not receive anything in return of substance.
And that's
the fuck.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the anger is coming from. People are seeing less and less every day, but they're being promised more and more, and they are never fucking delivering.
And that is not to say that the people who were involved in the attempted coup on January the 6th, 2021, did not have additional layers
they had other issues.
Racism and bigotry and various and sundry other issues, falling into completely unhinged conspiracy theories.
Say it with me
There's
now.
all kinds of things. I would even say that is I would say is the majority of the situation there. But the element of socioeconomic class and the dissatisfaction with where they are in life and the despair with which they see their future, that part cannot be ignored. You also cannot ignore the willingness to buy into conspiracy theories, the willingness to reject peer-reviewed science, and the willingness to just, you know, be assholes to people who have less social less social power than you do.
Yeah. And I think that in the end, the ongoing, and here's where you look at certain groups and go, they have become the popular villains of our time, and they are. The funny part is, I'm sitting around and I'm looking around and going, okay, so some of the popular villains of our time now are immigrants, are LGBT people. They are, which has been common for centuries, and it's gotten better. But the idea that it's getting better drives certain people crazy. You fill in the blanks. You know, again, we're in this interesting period. We are now living in interesting times, but we're in this interesting period where we're looking at some possibly fundamental change ahead of us. But
Yeah.
one of the most interesting things that I find, it was, one of the presidential candidates, and I will not be able to come up with his name, and I apologize.
That's totally okay, because I have lost my train of thought and not been able to think of particular terms or particular persons many, many times throughout this particular episode. So I'm going to lean into the fact that you can't think of a thing.
And enjoy it.
What were you going to say?
Yang came up with the idea, and he was he was probably the loudest voice for it, but it's been going around for a while. The idea of the government-supplied universal income. What that's basically saying is that the people who actually have the capital in the private sector won't pay you a living wage, so the government should.
Okay, no, I do know who you're talking about now.
Yeah. And
the very Silicon Valley type candidate.
Yeah.
Who was there for a hot minute.
Yeah. And the idea, I like the idea that, there should be a minimum basic living standard that we should allow everybody in the society to have, because that adds to our social stability, and also it's just the right human thing to do. But on the other hand, what it also says is we are giving up on the idea that the private sector has any desire whatsoever to pay you what your effort is worth, and instead we're just going to turn that role over to the government. But they won't raise taxes, so we're just going to go deeper into the hole. We are rapidly writing, quite literally writing checks that we cannot cash as a result of that. Yeah. And there comes a point where we have to sit there and go, hey, you guys have had a great run since 1980. For 41 years, you guys have been on a hell of a roll. Now then, you made all of this money on our backs and with our effort. Now fucking pay us back.
You have rolled out of the area of flour that has been, flicked out for you, and if you roll much further, you're just going to keep sticking.
Yep,
I don't know how I turn this into a baking metaphor, but
whatever works. So
but
anyway.
yeah, I don't know. I just don't know how much longer we can go where even if people are continually successful in convincing, small chunks of people, which together create a concerning mass of people, that socioeconomic difference and socioeconomic inequality is not what is truly separating us as human beings, and in the way that we are living and in these struggles that we are struggling with. I don't know that we're going to be able to go that much longer without the veneer of that cracking. And of course, I'm not going to lie. I have not read Barks. I have not read Bread Mom Kapratkin. I have not read the entirety of any of those works. But the idea behind, what is it, Das Kapital?
Yes.
Is that eventually the situation will arise where, the proletariat will rise up against the bourgeoisie. And I feel like we are fast approaching that point.
Yeah.
It would be nice if it didn't have to be a violent revolution. I cannot say whether it will be or not, but it would be nice if we could kind of shimmy our way over to a slightly more humanitarian mode of living, mode of governance, mode of a view of the global population. If we want to have the benefits of trading with places outside of our country of origin, then we also kind of have to settle ourselves into the idea that we are not, the way that we exist is not the only way to exist. And we kind of have to make peace with that. And I don't think it's going to, again, jumping back to Us Three Blokes instance of earlier, the kind of mishmash, unintelligible pop culture that is, late 80s, early 90s sci-fi movies, where everything is just like, is it Chinese? Is it American? Is it Indian? Is it Egyptian? Is it Brazilian? I don't fucking know. It's just kind of everything. It's not going to necessarily get to that point where like all of the cultures have crashed into each other and the only universal language is capital, because that's the other thing about that fucking sci-fi trope, is even though all of these cultures have kind of intertwined into each other, it's all very pre-packaged. It's all very for sale. One thing that kind of sticks with me with the Fifth Element is where Corbin, the ship lands on Floston Paradise, and it's a group of presumably Hawaiian or some sort of Pacific Islander singers singing a song. I'm actually trying to research what that specific song is. I did get a little bit of a lead on Reddit, but there are not only people who appear in my Western sensibilities to be Pacific Islander, there are also folks who appear to be Caucasian, who are handing out the leis, who are singing the song and swaying the sway dance. And it's all at once kind of this culmination of cultures coming together, and also this kind of divorce of culture, where everything that gave it meaning, be it ethnic, cultural, spiritual, geographical, whatever you want to point to, that portion of its meaning has been divorced from it, and it's just been packaged into this little thing. And I swear to God, I hit a point with this.
That seems to be the theme of the day.
Yeah, no, gosh, I cannot hold on to a thought. I think you talked about that one instance of me appearing on your doorstep in cat ears while you were on mushrooms.
Yes.
And I have just taken that into my mind, and I am just like going forward without any particular notion of where I'm going.
Oh, it's nice to know.
I am not on mushrooms. It is only the fermented grapes that are affecting my speech, but anyway.
Yep. with that, we should wrap relatively soon because
we should. It's been a long time. I think this is actually the longest time we've been going. I do want to bring up one very important factor, just in case I haven't. Xerxes made a very good point. Patrick Warburton was and always shall be the ultimate The Tick.
Yes.
And no one else will ever take his place with that.
I agree with this plan. I am very much behind this.
Very important in the way of socioeconomic justice. I felt I had to include it. I'm so sorry. But yeah, we've talked about a lot of things tonight, and I think we're going to carry them forward into future episodes. I know that we didn't necessarily hit super hard on this for a popcorn episode. This was like very heavily drenched in butter.
Yes.
The butter of capitalism. But I still feel like we trod upon many good little tidbits of things, many stones of justice and philosophical inquiry. I've turned us into horses, by the way, as we are trotting along this trail of prosperity and supervillainy.
Yes.
Next week, do we have any idea what we will be speaking on next week?
Not a clue at this point. If anybody in the audience, by the way, has ideas of what they want to hear us speak about, feel free to let us know. I'm reasonably certain that talking more about the entire notion of, how can you be both a supervillain and create prosperity? We would like to know.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because of the fact that we have...
It's the name of the show.
The name of the show, and not just because Kat and I have taken out a mortgage on a hollowed-out volcano that we're going to be building a base under. But it would be good to have some tips thrown out there.
Yes. What do you think it means to be a supervillain who is fighting to upset the status quo? Because the status is not quo. We'll have to talk some more about Dr. Horrible. I think I've mentioned it a number of times, but I would like to talk about Dr. Horrible specifically sometime, because I think there are some things to look into there. He has some good points as far as not really challenging Penny on the notion of opening a center for the homelessness, or center for the houseless, a homeless shelter, where he says you're treating a symptom, you're not treating the disease itself. I think there is something to be said for that, and it sucks because I kind of think that portion of what he says, whether or not it is how he actually feels rather than what he wants to present as what he is fighting for as a supervillain, that kind of falls by the wayside, and it more just devolves into fighting for the girl by the end of it.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog is and will probably always be one of my favorite pieces of media. That being said, that does not mean that we cannot discuss it with a critical eye.
Yeah.
But that sort of thing, I think Dr. Horrible in particular is something that we should talk about in depth sometime. But as far as next week goes, I don't know entirely. I'm still kind of on the role of getting away from the toxic work environment and making myself. I'm healing up. Okay, I'm gathering hearts. I'm smashing pots in random villages so that I can gain health.
Yeah, like
and and magic points, so that I can go forth and do the thing.
Yeah, like you do.
And unfortunately, it is not as I would like it. It is not something that can be put on a timeline necessarily. It is not something that I can plan specifically for, even though I would like to. I would like to say, yes, it will take me 3, maybe 4 weeks to totally heal from, all of the things that have made me go crazy monkey banana bread.
Yeah.
But that is not the way that it is. There is no set schedule. 0. Whatever next week's episode shall be, I will announce it in the Discord. And like my dear doctor said, if you have any thoughts on what you might like us to discuss in future episodes, be it a prosperity episode or a popcorn episode, please put it in the comments or in the live chat, depending on where we will all be. Han, Rick, Lily, Xerxes, Fabi, anyone and everyone who has jumped in. Also Justin. Justin jumped in as well. All of you who jumped in to be a part of the live stream, I really appreciate you joining us, and I really appreciate your comments and your contributions to the conversation, be they serious or humorous or both. I really enjoy them all. And it's part of why I keep doing this. I like to think that we come back every week, not just because of the loud and very noisy thoughts that are in our own heads, but also to hear the thoughts of you all. And what is the usual thing that I say? The usual thing that I say, hammered home even more by the book that I am still continuing to listen to, thanks to my therapist, called Laziness Does Not Exist. And yes, I will link it again in the description. Please, if you cannot take the time to do something that truly brings you unencumbered joy, at the very, very least, please take the time to just 10 minutes. Sit down and do absolutely nothing. Don't think, don't tweet, don't write. Just stare off into space, look at the ground, look at the back of your eyelids. Do nothing. It'll be good for you, I promise. And I hope everyone has a very enjoyable weekend. And Doctor, if you have any final thoughts, please, let's have them.
Let me see. My final thoughts are, you know what? We're heading into spring. We've turned the corner. We are eventually going to be seeing less of the gray skies and a bit more of the sun. So you know what? Before I blot it from the fucking sky, enjoy. Sorry, just had to get that one off my chest. But
Perfect.
But seriously, you know what? We've all, especially for the last 4 years, and we're kind of coming out of it, and we're witnessing, well, you know, the status quo taking on a different name and a different place and some different faces. Don't stop looking and going, we can get better and we can improve. There's a really, really great series that's running on YouTube because it started on BBC called I Can't Get You Out of My Head by Adam Curtis. And one of the things that he talks about is we seem to be short on new stories and new ideas and new concepts of progress. So
yes.
Hey, never, ever stop looking for that. And never feel as though this is the one moment where everything can stop at this moment and everything will be perfect. Because you never know. Tomorrow could be better. Take a swing at it.
Archetypes are totally a thing, but that does not mean that there are not new stories out there, new faces, new voices. Always be on the lookout for those. Keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, If you have neither of those senses to speak of, you know, keep your hands open. Whatever senses you have available to you, keep them at the ready to receive new and different things. Very important. Very important. I had one thing I was going to say. It was maybe a media recommendation that I was going to talk about. I don't remember.
I made my media recommendation. So.
No more Pata Negra.
Yeah.
Okay? No more Pata Negra for me. Because it, you know, I'm scatterbrained enough as it is. I shouldn't be allowed. Next time we'll stick with beer. We'll stick with beer. Beer doesn't, you know, cut off my mental faculties quite like this has apparently done.
Wine is a difficult thing for me, as I keep saying. It goes straight to the lips, right to my brain, and then it shuts it down.
Bit sparkling or no.
Yes.
All right, everyone, please have a good weekend. And if you're on the Discord, please jump back there. Say what you liked about this episode. Say what you didn't like about this episode. You know, make media recommendations about the things that you are enjoying consuming right now, be it television, film, music, animation, art, whatever. Gimme. Or, you know, if you are just in need of a little bit of a reassurance that the world is not total shite, you know, you can visit the Cute Wars tab on my Discord and, you know, see many adorable animals, or occasionally cute human things. Occasionally you put cute human things on there. Mostly it's animals. Animals are less less apt for like the bad kind of supervillainy.
Yeah.
Except for cats. Cats, you cannot trust those motherfuckers. They can be right bastards, and you need to watch out for them. Yes, you know, give them treats and give them pets, but maybe don't leave your door unlocked if you have one in the house. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Everyone, please have a good evening. Bye.
Good night, and thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Good night.